Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode, and I think already audience from World Talent Economy Forum, they know about Pacific Crime Business Council as well as California Miramar University. So we have a and we discuss about universal basic income. So last sessions, I think we planned that we will go for the universal basic income, even though in the COVID situations now in Asia Pacific, you can see the Asia Pacific countries and different China, Japan's, and everybody like 14 countries they collaborate, and they're trying to overcome from these economical challenges. Yes, this is around 29% of the total GDP around the world, and it's a very strong economy. Beside that, we can analyze that how universal basic income in terms of North America as well as in Asia Pacific, how it works. And maybe some of the speakers they can discuss on the positive sides. Some of the speakers maybe they can discuss about the negative things. Even our audience can come up with a different perception. We just want to understand what will be good for 21st century. So I want to start with Dr. Ali Goabadi. He is from California Miramar University. Let's start with him.
Thank you so much. And hello, everybody. I know it's very late in Far East. So, I mean, the issue of universal basic income has been around for a long time. And ever since, 2019, where Gini started measuring this issue of income inequality and the fact that every human being has right to medicine as well as to basic shelter and basic income has been around for a very, very long time. So, universal basic income is a discussion now. I think Moo's gonna say, if you want to talk about universal basic income, you have to talk about socialism from some sort of perspective that really is considered a taboo. But it seems like it's coming uh, again into the limelight, and people are very much interested because of the fact that we see such a disparity between income. We see poor are being left alone to their own, and that's causing a fair amount of instability. We see just in a matter of a few decades, poor have gotten poorer, middle income people have gotten poorer, and the only people who are making a lot of money disproportionately so are the top 1%. And this has created a fair amount of disillusionment with the capitalistic system. And it's a very hot subject. So I'm not going to go through the whole discussion of it, but tell you that the issues related to UBI is really hand in hand with what do we consider human right when it comes to being able to have a life, to be able to have a shelter, to be able to eat and have access to minimal level of sustenance.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. Mr. Homestoners, you are chairman for Pacific Crime Business Council, then you have a huge experience from around the world. What's your perception about UBI?
Well, I agree with Dr. Ali in the fact that, as a matter of fact, we're already collecting it in a different form when the federal government issued emergency money uh, during this pandemic, started issuing free money, basically giving people a stipend to carry them over until this dissipates. So, in essence, we're already in a strange way getting it now. But the fact of the matter is that when Andrew Yang ran for president of the United States, it was one of his main platforms. And that's why he had a strong showing, because there is a groundswell of support for that particular program here in the United States. Because, once again, as Dr. Ellie explained, the disparity between the rich and the poor, and that keeps widening and widening. And we need to have some kind of uh, of safety nets, seeing that these lower echelon jobs, person-to-person jobs, cashiers, truck drivers, all of these people that are working, that proximity to each other, and they basically are being phased out as robotics and computerization took over. So it has to be some kind of safety net, or we're going to have uh, twice as many homeless, twice as many people looking for some way of subsistence. So I'm strong. I'm a strong believer in it. I believe in it.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Dr. Stan Foster, what do you want to say about this universal basic income? And one specific point, because this topic is very new, even for Asia Pacific. I think our audience gonna learn many more things. If you want to add some theories and some practical things, it will be helpful for us.
Well, as Dr. Guyabadi said, the idea of this has been around for hundreds of years. Thomas Paine, which is one of our founding fathers, wrote about it in his pamphlets about the concept during the American Revolution. So it's not a new concept at all. I think the delicate balance here is that how do you provide your people with a solid foundation? Should all education be free? Should all healthcare be free? Should there be a basic income? All of those are kind of interrelated questions, and they beg the question. Now, there's been some recent studies that show, and I'll quote those later. I'll give you the exact site, but that has shown that there's not a great deal of difference between the people that did and did not get some basic assistance. As Holmes Stoner said, there are several programs, not only the one that we just got for the relief for COVID. Now that one was COVID specific, but we have various sorts of subsistence relief. That one is called an EIC, which is the Earned Income Tax Credit, and another one is called the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. So there are some of those. One of the things they found in the latest CARES Act, which was troubling, is that it was intended to help a struggling sector of the economy, and we found out later on, because it was rushed into fruition so quickly, is that many of the people that were getting the assistance truly didn't need it. And so there was some big uproars. As a matter of fact, some of the companies that took that assistance actually gave that money back after the scrutiny came through. So again, it's a very multiple faceted answer. Now, I'll let everybody else weigh in, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit deeper in the reads on this as we go.
Mhm. Yes, thank you, Mr. Eric. As you have a experience to run the Pacific Rim Business Councils, and you can understand different cultures and different point of views. Especially from Malaysia, we are representing developing nations. We are not like North America is a very big economy, something like that. But what your observation about this universal basic income?
So the design of UBI was to curtail poverty is the big thing. And we've always had programs to do that. One of the questions is, do you do that on a temporary basis as people need it? Or do you provide a basic no matter what? One of the ideas is this basic no matter what is to cut red tape. Like we have a big kind of warehouse store in the US called Costco, and they got rid of all their pricing people. They found it was more expensive to try and figure out what to charge than to just charge a flat rate. So they buy things at the lowest price. They put a standard markup. Doesn't matter whether you buy a stick of gum or a candy or a car. It's the same markup. And they found that was much less expensive. So that's part of the idea is let's cut the red tape. Let's make it easy. We know people are going to be helped. So that leads to things. Do you really do this all the time or some of the time when you help out poverty? And then the other thing is, well, if you do give it, what's the cost? Andrew Yang, as Dr. Foster mentioned, said $1,000 a month. I think Bernie Sanders was saying $2,000 a month. The real reason it's catching on now is two reasons. One is the idea, even before COVID, was the idea of technology is moving fast, that they expect people to be out of jobs for a significant amount of time when you have to train to take on some new technologically based job. And then the other thing, of course, was when you get massive disasters like a pandemic. So that's really the idea. If you get rid of UBI and just say, who should we help? When do you help them? How much? That's the real question, whether you're a capitalist or socialist or anything. The idea, though, is, and this is where all the speculation comes, is what happens to people when you put them on UBI? Do they become motivated? Do they become less stressed? Do they become lazy? And nobody really knows for sure. We're making stating a lot of opinions as facts rather than testing it and seeing what really happens.
Well, I just want to add in too, the other major issue is, can we afford it in the United States? Andrew Yang's proposal would have added $2.8 trillion to a year to the U.S. budget. And we don't, I mean, that's just printing money and giving up that you're ever going to try to have any semblance that you're ever going to get back out of just printing money as you need it.
Well, what does it save, though? That's the question. Let's say you get rid of welfare. Let's say you get half of programs. Let's say you get a lot of rid of administration. Is the same argument of, do you do a flat tax or a scale tax? A scale tax where everybody has to almost be a mathematical and accounting genius to figure out what you pay in taxes, or do you just make it easy? Here's what you may flat. You know, I don't think we've looked at that. We just look at the one thing saying, here's what it costs. Yeah, but what are we paying now? And that's Andrew Yang's proposal. That's not UBI. That's Andrew Yang. What proposal could we live with, if any? We don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
yes.
One of the issues on taxes, and this has been the argument.
I directly want to go.
I was in college in 100 years ago. The most fair tax is a value-added tax, and that's to corporations and to individuals. You can't duck paying taxes if you pay on what you consume and you utilize. And so that, but there's a lot of other forces at stake. Why do big corporations, I agree in corporations. I love corporations, and big and small, that employ people. And I believe in giving them some sort of a tax incentive, but free, I don't know if free is fair. So I've always found that the value-added tax is probably the most fair tax, and having a reasonable amount on that is not going to break anybody. It's not going to de-incentivize those companies from still hiring and having the cycle. But yet it's the fairest tax that I've ever seen proposed.
Yes. I want to go to Mr. Mu. Before that, I want to add, even though in the COVID period, Professor Abhishek Banerjee, who won Nobel Prize last year from MIT, his proposal was something like that for India and the developing countries, that government has to pay some money to the poor people, and if the poor people, they utilize this money, then again this demand and supply situation will be in the positive, and the GDP growths and other things go in positive. You see that India is the biggest economy, still now they are -10 their GDPs and other things. Besides, I want to go to Mr. Mu, but I want to take some audience response, like you can understand how people like you, how people waiting for you. Humar Tanzila, hello sir. We feel honored to have you all in this session. Thank you, sir. Araf Mehraj, hello sir. We are waiting for such a discussion. Thanks everyone. I think we have the idea of Mr. Mu.
Okay. So,
Mr. Mu.
universal basic. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're fine.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So, universal basic income. So, what's the idea? Right? There are basically 5 school of thoughts against it, and I from Mr. Eric and Dr. Vosser. Their statement that I heard that basically all of them, and 4 of them is basically 3 of them there are empirical evidence already, made that claim against UBI irrelevant. And one of them leads to a really deep discussion about our basic economic and social system. And one of them is really not it's really not a valid argument. And particularly, I will address them eventually during this entire call. I don't want to take all the time, but I want to address at least on one of them right now, so we don't even get this started. So we won't waste much time on it. It's the logistics of UBI. How do we distribute that much money? How do we, make sure that the people who actually need the money gets the money? That's the same argument when the kings made, when the capitalist wants to take over the world, right? They are when the democracists want to take the world. They said, then how are you going to vote, right? You don't know what's good for you. You're just a peasant, right? Only kings, we were born kings, so we know what's best for the poor people. Right? So that's the argument they use when capitalism started to take over. Right? That's when feudalism was the dominant power. And before that, there was slavery. When feudalism wants to take over, the slave owner said, you can't take our slaves. They don't know what's best for them. They're animals. And you can't give animals autonomy, and otherwise, animals will run the world. And that's the between the feudalism and slavery. And now we have a problem between capitalism and what's next. Unless you're arrogant enough to know that, to think we are at the end of our history. Right? History keeps pushing forward. Right? And if you're arguing capitalism as we have it now is perfect, then there is no argument with that, right? The whole point of the discussion is to be open to ideas. But if you just start off any new idea, then we can't even have a discussion. So with that being said, this pass to the difficulty again, the difficulty argument against UBI. You can't say we can't do it because it's too difficult. You can't say we just don't do it because it might waste more money to decide who gets the money. Right now, most of our economy came from the finance sector. And what is finance if not to the service to decide who gets the money? Right? So if we can support our finance system, if we can support our banking system, I'm sure we can figure out a way to support how to distribute money to have people stay alive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I want to take more question from audience. Sohail Rana, hello, talented guest. Welcome to World Talent Economy Forum. And there is a specific questions. Mr. Jason, his question is that, what do you think about having UBI tied to certain preventative education, mental health treatment, or even the repatriations issues? Yes, I want to start from Dr. Ali, and it's an open questions. So yes.
All right. I mean, before getting to these questions, yeah, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? All right.
Yes.
Yes.
So before getting to these questions, which are very valid, we need to look at, first of all, somehow it seems like we've accepted certain unnatural things for the fact, and that is, number one, some rich people, which we call them rich, have access to the only source that is available, that's the earth. So rich people have a tendency to take advantage of the resources that supposedly belongs to everyone, and they consider themselves to be smart because they happen to be there first, they happen to have the greed or whatever that they have been able to take advantage of it. And we sort of came up with this idea of money, which I don't know where that came from. I do actually. And suddenly, because this money, which supposedly is a measure of value, but in reality, a few of us have more access to the resources that belongs to all of us. And then they made it so complicated. So we feel, as Mo was saying, that they are deserving of all these privileges because they are better than the rest of us. And then the rest of us have to be begging to make sustenance. In reality, if you go back, and that's why you need to go back and study history, you'll see that in reality, there is no difference between anyone. Those who have it and who's going to call the ones who don't have it the lazy ones are actually the greedy ones who have managed, for whatever manner or with whatever means of convincing others, to have more access to the resources that belongs to the humanity as a whole. By the way, they are causing more damage to our limited resources than anyone else, and entitling themselves to these riches, considering themselves the one who work. By the way, I have never seen anyone get rich by working. Working does not produce riches. And that's the reality of this life, that no one gets rich. No one becomes mega rich by working. Guess what? There is something else happening here. It has nothing to do with being lazy or not lazy. It has to do with your access to the resources through putting your peons into a position or taking over unfairly so the resources that supposedly should have belonged to you. In reality, you take this cover of complexity away, you see some greedy people have taken over the limited resources of Earth and consider themselves smart, and the rest of us who have to make ends meet by working in such difficult and arduous jobs, the lazy ones who just don't know what's good for them. We need to ask the question, what's human right when it comes to the only resource available, Earth? Some don't have so much right in comparison to the rest. It's unfair. UBI is a way of remedying that, but the greedy ones are not willing to let go of their mechanistical approach to take over the resources and coming up with all these instruments and money and everything else. But in reality, people who are rich don't work. We work for them. The question, how did they come to deserve us working for them?
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Homestoner.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Homestoner, yes. Do you want to add something in the specific questions?
Well, as long as there is the element of debt that we all live under here, particularly in the United States, as they say, gold is the currency of the rich. Debt is the currency of the poor. As long as that exists, as Dr. Ali so appropriately just explained, and that chasm between the rich and the poor, if some kind of mechanism is not put in place, there are, as we know in human history, there are endless revolutions. And that never ends, because there are always going to be the rich and the poor. The only thing that holds the glue, that holds it together, the middle class, if that erodes and goes away through some way or other, then there's social unrest. And that's just the way it is. And that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it's always going to be.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Stan Foster, what do you want to add?
I'm going to add, rather thinking, going back to Jason's question here, what do you think about having UBI tied to certain issues, certain items? Okay, preventative education might be one, but I do think it's tying. I mentioned this last week in our last week's call when we only touched on UBI. In knowing the psyche of workers, the studies that have been done, that people are tied to a sense of accomplishment as one of their top items in their satisfaction and their well-being as a worker, right? So that doesn't have to be tied to money necessarily, but I think you can also make the case that if you are, we have so many social causes, so many needs. Right now, we've had wildfires in the west of the United States, and what have they found? They found that our forests haven't been managed adequately, and they need to be, the brush needs to be thinned and everything else. And our infrastructure of our highways is at its worst all time. You know, they did this under FDR, but, you know, in the Great Deal, where they incentivized the people, they paid them during a depression, and they gave them money and hired them to do projects that really benefited the United States. Nobody was complaining at that time. Nobody came up and said, "Oh, this is socialism." It's just a matter of fact. So I think there's, you know, to get money, I think it's great. I do, and I think we should tie it to you know, really good health coverage, not one, you know, not making people that can't don't want to have their individual doctors, but but the right to, you know, a living and the right to education and a right to health are all human rights that I think, for Americans particularly, I think that's one of the things that we would all agree upon, that those are rights that we should champion. But they also don't, you know, I mean, so I need to get some money. I want to tie to a UBI. Then let me choose and go out and choose what I would like to do. I want to go work in the forest, or I want to work on the committees that are building and improving the infrastructure of the roads and the highways. But I'm just getting on one side of that. There's a litany of things that you could choose to do. Now you're earning money. Doesn't mean that you can't escape from that. You can go to school, you can get another set of trades, and you can go into a different direction. But I do think that just from the health and well-being of the psyche of the worker alone, nobody wants just a free lunch where I don't have to do it and I can just do anything I want and I have no accountability whatsoever. And having this ability to choose something that I would really like to do, earn that guaranteed wage, and go on with my life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Mo and Eric. Mr. Eric, what do you want to add? Audience has huge questions because they want to know more about this point.
Yeah, so there's this idea, well, won't this make everybody lazy? And the answer is maybe. What the core lesson of marketing teaches that people respond in predictable ways. For example, casinos here in the US can tell you exactly how many more people it'll bring in if they offer the chance to win a new car. And they can tell you by model. If it's a Mercedes, BMW, whatever, it'll bring in this many more people. And they know that to a very high accuracy. However, the biggest mistake, what marketing teaches, is trying to predict what those predictable ways people behave is. People don't respond like you think they are. So to say, well, this will make people lazy, we don't really know. You have to actually test that out. For example, in Finland, they replaced unemployment with basic income, and it just showed no difference at all. You know, the amount of people got out of work and they acted just like they didn't get that. So it didn't make a difference at all. And that's a very small study. So you really have to start with not these preconceived notions of what UBI is or not, or what it'll do. You have to start with what do we want and how do we view people. Like in the US, a lot of people say people on welfare are lazy. Some of them, but how much and what it is. They tend to point out specific cases where somebody has abused the system and say, see, system's broken. The question is to assume we're going to do something new no one's ever done before, and we're going to correctly predict, forecast exactly how it's going to go is wrong. If you've never done anything this big, you don't know how it's going to go. You're going to find some good and bad. You may have to get rid of the whole program. You may say, this is great, let's add more. But whatever we do, we're going to have to change it because we don't know how to do this. This is something no one's ever done before. And to assume we know how it's going to happen and what's going to go, we can try running numbers first. But again, we don't know what the predictable behavior people will experience if you implement this.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mu, because yes.
So from the question, I can tell. Can I go back to Jason's question, because I don't think that's been fully addressed, even though we have been everybody been through. I want to start to answer his question too. So from this question, this is a very good question actually. This shows that Jason has do his homework on the UBI, and a couple of the main argument for OBI is actually the education and the mental health issue. So when you need mental health care, when you need education to find a job, arguably that's probably too late already. So the whole idea of UBI is when people has enough to stay above the poverty line, they make better decisions. When they have enough sleep, when they are well fed, they start thinking about something more productive instead of just robbing a bank and do whatever gets them by. And that ties into the like Eric said, the human psyches. What are the human needs? And that ties into Maslow's need hierarchies. Right? Unless you fulfill the first couple levels of the need hierarchy, namely the basic needs of the biological need, the need of food, water, shelter, and the need of security. Unless you have that, you don't think about getting more educated. You don't think about having a better mental health. And do you go to see therapists if you are starving? No. Right? That's the do you even think about your mental health if you are starving? Probably not. So that is where this universal basic income comes in. It wants to get people to a point where they start looking into educations, which coincidentally ties into why do we need education? Because I don't know who made that argument earlier. I forgot about the New Deal with FDR, right? The building infrastructures. It's a form of and. Back in the FDR day, I would say FDR during that day, that was the peak of American socialism, and arguably socialism was born in America, in a sense of that the practical, the most successful practices of socialism was done in America about 70 years ago, and then comes McCarthy. And then you get the McCarthyism, and all of a sudden socialism become a taboo, right? So the reason why we can't even open a legit conversation within our political system, politicians cannot, stop themselves from committing, political suicide for talking, socialism, is still because we are still living in that McCarthy mentalism. So
agreed.
Unless we get out of that hype space, we can't even have a legit discussion yet, right? But I like this forum because this is more international focused, and the situation outside of US is very different on socialism. And I do see a couple questions concerned about what countries are more likely to adapt, which companies are more likely to be successful in UBI with UBI. And there are already answers out there, and I think Eric keeps saying, there's no evidence saying UBI is good or bad. The reality is there are some countries already doing this experiment, and the result, there are empirical results saying UBI does improve people's chance of starting to think about education. It does improve people's mental health, and those research are backed by legit institutes, and the institutes that's under the control of still the McCarthy mental mindset. Right? We're talking about Harvard, we're talking about MIT here. They actually did research that's backing the legitimacy of the UBI that's beneficial for workforce. Right? And when you take off people's mental health, when you take off people's education, you actually improve their productivity.
You see, where we have to go is simple. You see, again, the reason I'm bringing this down to more reasonable terms. When you say lazy, because I noticed someone saying people get lazy, someone talking about mental health, let's look at again what's happening. 1% of people, 1%, owns for more than 45% of the world riches. I mean, wouldn't you go crazy if you knew that? I mean, there is no way for you to ever make ends meet by just working. Wouldn't that make you hopeless? Wouldn't that cause mental illness at the society level? The realities today are such that we need to once again ask a question: what does it mean to be a human being, and what are the basic rights of human beings? Really, the question at hand is that UBI is one solution. And to add to what Mo was saying, just right now we are in the middle of 13.6 million people under UBI at, in Korea, South Korea. It's been extremely successful. And that's not much. They're paying only $250 a quarter to people. Or they just recently did a year and a half of a study at Finland that showed great improvement to general psyche. It added to the value of a society. It brought peace, tranquility, as well as resilience to society. In all honesty, as Mr. Stoner was saying, the way system has been run, at least for the past millennia, is that this diversity and the gap between those who have access to riches and those who can't make it becomes wide enough, large enough, that causes civil unrest. And we see all these revolutions, we see the crusades, we see world wars. Why? Because in reality, where people are fed up to a point that they cannot live, as again Mo was saying, Maslow's studies are very important. When do we become human? If someone's hungry, if someone doesn't have shelter, if someone is scared, if someone is not loved, if someone is in a desperate situation, you expect them to act like a gentlewoman or a gentleman? I mean, question is this: to be human requires a minimal set of possibilities and a minimal set of rights. If you don't have those rights and possibilities, then to expect human being to act in a civil manner would be unfair. And that's what UBI is trying to address. What is that basic level of need a society has to address to be able to look to its citizens, as human beings, as civilized people? It's like this: a child. I mean, if a child is born, we're not like horse that as soon as you're born you start walking. A child takes about 2 years to walk. Can you ever expect a child to go on its own, let's say 6 months after it's born? No way. Even in the animal world, we as human beings need about 15 years of support to be able to continue our life. As even in animal world, what animal needs 15 years of being able to stand on its own? You think a wolf, a lion, a horse, a sheep, a cow? No, only human beings. The question is this: if human being, naturally speaking, requires so much caring from the time it's born till the time it can stand on its own, let's say 15 years, if we need 15 years to be able to stand on our own, don't we need a certain minimal level of sustenance related issues to make us a human being? It's not just the way we were born, but the way we are. Human beings, the only reason we supposedly are superior to other beings is in the fact that we can communicate and we can live in community and we're a social creature. You want a human being to be a good social creature? Make them a good social creature by offering them minimal sustenance, minimal. That minimal sustenance, you take it away from any creature and they go crazy, they go insane, they become either mentally or emotionally disturbed. In reality, the greed of those who are taking the riches unfairly so has caused so much damage on the society as a whole, and it's non-human. Human beings need that level of security, meaning security from rain, and because our bodies are not created to live in the wild, and we need to be able to eat, we need to be able to have a minimal level of social life to become human being. The question is, when people are subhuman, don't expect them to be gentle. We cannot, as those who have access to the riches of the world, expect those who can barely make ends meet to be sane, to be healthy, and to be civil. And guess what? They become crazy. They do blow themselves up. They become terrorists. Why? Because we have put them in a position. Universal basic income is telling us we need to first empower human beings to become human beings and then talk about humanity. When you push people below a level that there is no option but to become what you see all over the world, then even those greedy owners of all the resources who have unfairly done so will be in danger. If they want, and this is, I think, the future, I absolutely believe universal basic income will be implemented in every country in the world. That's the only way to sustainability. That's the only way to a place where humanity can even start to be, below a level of sustenance, below a level of minimal security, minimal shelter, minimal belonging. You may not be able to see humanity. And up to now, we have not yet been born as human race because a lot of us are under a level of being human. Again, go back to a child. Can you throw a 1-year-old child out there and say, go live on your own? This sounds unreasonable. Expecting people not to have sustenance and security to behave civil is absolutely unfair. And to be honest, I believe, based on what we saw in Finland, based on what we seeing right now in Korea, very soon USA and other nations will have no other option but UBI.
I was listening to
Okay, thank you.
and I'm sorry, I was interested in listening to an interview a few weeks ago with the director of security for the state of Israel, and they asked him, "What aren't you afraid? You're a small country, and you're surrounded by people who want to see you gone, and they're everybody's got all of their missiles and everything pointed at you. Aren't you afraid?" And he says, "You know what I'm afraid of?" And he says, "No." And he says, "I'm afraid of poverty, because the people that are surrounding us have nothing to lose." And that's the point. The point is, you get to a point where you have a population of hundreds of millions of people that have nothing to lose. That's not a civilized world. That's an uncivilized world. And Dr. Ali couldn't be more correct. And I believe everything that he's told you, and everything that he believes in, I back him 100%. If we don't do something, and we don't do it soon, we're going to have such a disparity, and we're going to have a lot of social unrest around the world.
And this is crazy. How could we have 26 billionaires that have as much as the bottom 50% of the world? That is insane. You want to look for someone who's insane? Look at those 26 billionaires who have as much as the 50%. Why do they need it? What are they doing? You see, the reality of what's happening to our global stability has to do with insanity, not at the part of the poor who have the right to be, at the type of rich who are plundering and whose greed seems no end.
Yes, I want to take few questions. I think I want to start with Dr. Stan Foster's. hello everyone, what are the negative side of setting universal basic income? And there are some question, I think almost same, but we can take. Hello sir, would universal basic income misused people from saving money? Anyway, so why would people work if they are receiving a basic income? And there is another questions, would rich countries have to financially support developing and the third world countries if they implement UBI? But one point I just want to add for this question, actually, I want to say developing nations has their own capacity to manage their things. Example, if you see India, even China, even Bangladesh or India or even Malaysia, developing countries' financial capacity is good, not bad at all. But psychologically, we have some problem. Like we always think that, okay, developed nations pay some money, we will do these projects. Developed nation give us money, we will go for UBI. Developed nation give us money. This is something that I believe personally it's a wrong perception. And I request our audience, when you ask questions or something, please come up with some uh, like basic work and study. You just Google it, you get some informations. But this is one of the mentality. I'm strongly believe that developing nations has really very good potentiality. They have to utilize their resources. Anyway, I want to go to the negative side of this UBI.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Dr. Stan Foster.
Yeah, I've already, I make, be tagged as the person that's against UBI. I'm not, but the best intentions all depend upon implementation. Okay, our government in the United States, you've got those billionaires, but those billionaires are contributing to a lot of political campaigns, and so when it's good, how do those things get implemented? Right? When you're seeing a lot of the poverty in the Middle East that are leading to those tensions, how would UBI be implemented? Because if you have corrupt government administrating the funds, you're not much better off. Okay, you have a different set of billionaires. That's my challenge. Okay, and in the United States, our founding fathers wanted everybody. They didn't want a political class. They wanted you to serve one term and go back and be a common citizen. That changed rather rapidly. And since that has changed, now those people, when you have career politicians, they're subject to being, leveraged by the various factions. So that's the United States. In other countries, I would hate to see, I don't know what all of the mechanisms, but if one of the larger Middle Eastern countries that has that's very poor right now started to implement a UBI, I don't know how that would work out. I mean, I'm hopeful. I would love to see that, but I'm just judging from the past. And if you don't have good checks and balances, I do think the United States is one of the countries that does have good checks and balances, but they're still subject to a lot of different forces that don't allow them to implement things smartly. Again, I don't know. I mean, I do think that I can see the benefits of UBI. I do see the benefits that just because you get money, again, I'm going to stay where I was, doesn't mean you don't have to. It wouldn't be better for you to do something to help the country out that's given the money to you, okay, or the county or the state that's giving the money to you. I think that's still a very smart and healthy thing to do. So again, it's not one or the other, but I just see implementation and those forces as a really major hurdle.
And I have to agree with Stan, and that's kind of what I've been saying is, while Moo said, oh yeah, we've done some studies that work and show good things, but they've all been limited scale. I mean, sure, Mongolia, Iran, Finland, North Korea have shown some things, but here's one thing that the studies, those efforts showed, and that's that a lot of what people expected to happen didn't happen, and some things they didn't expect did happen. So we don't really know. I know when they implemented healthcare in the US, nobody had ever done that on that kind of scale. And there were so many problems that went way into debt. People didn't even understand the systems to keep track of it. Nobody, and rather instead of rolling, testing, and does this work, they said, oh yeah, we're going to figure it out and roll it out in one big chunk. And quite frankly, it was a disaster and it didn't work. And in fact, they would have probably done better if they'd taken the money to roll out the system, just gave it to everybody and said, pay your medical bills, because it costs way more and it was all an implementation thing. So I guess what I'm saying is that we don't really know the issue. That's not necessarily bad things. Some of us here have engineering backgrounds. We know when you tackle a problem that's not, you try and figure out what you do know, what you don't know, and you move and test. And this is also entrepreneurs and startup, pivot and persevere. You try it and go. What we do know is we don't want people to starve. We don't want people who need to be treated or helped or rescued to not get that. We know we want people to be well off at some level. The question is how you do it. Some people have talked about UBI as one of those things. Lou's saying yes, Stan's saying I don't know, and I'm saying maybe. I don't know. It's a good thing.
Okay,
It's certainly worth exploring. It's certainly worth trying it in places and seeing what happens. But to say, oh yeah, people be lazy, there's not going to, because guess what? We haven't seen that. We haven't seen people who've been getting some kind of assistance just say, well, I no longer need to work and I'm not motivated anymore. We haven't seen half the things, and some of the questions are really good questions, but we haven't seen it. So we don't know. So the reason for not doing it can't be, well, I think people would behave badly, because we haven't seen that. We don't know. So I agree with Stan. Implementation is going to be a key, especially if you do this at scale, because there's a big difference between trying to do that for Singapore and trying to do that for India. Big difference.
I just want to make one quick little point. And what we were talking about was the social, the medicine was the Obamacare, okay, which was a great concept, but it was implemented poorly. And I remember when that was happening, people said, well, what can we do to make this thing work? And I said, look at the health care system and the plan that they've implemented in Congress. Pretty darn good, okay? And if it's good enough for Congress, why wouldn't it be good enough for the American people, okay? It went much further than what they came up with. And because this was a plan, very political, everything in the United States tends to be super, super political, and that to the detriment of the people, all right? So was that a good concept? Absolutely. Was it implemented poorly? Yeah, absolutely. So now we have to look at implementation, and it doesn't, I come from the motion picture business, and there's a great quote by Francis Ford Coppola about how to make a movie: fast, cheap, good. Pick two, okay? It can't be, if it's going to be fast, it's not going to be cheap, and it's not going to be probably good. So the key thing is just having consideration and try to depoliticize this as much as possible. And I know that in today's world that's almost impossible, but absolutely implementation and look towards those type of things and those type of implementations that are already in place that can be copied. When states write new laws on a different area in the United States, they don't start from scratch. They go back to the bigger states, New York, Florida, California. What did they do? And they copy them, okay? They don't try to start from scratch. So good common sense. And unfortunately right now, common sense isn't very common.
We also have another problem with that healthcare rollout that Stan was talking about. And that's the fact that some people were just against the idea because of preconceived notions that it was going to destroy the world and things would be terrible. And so they actually did everything they could to prevent every step. So a lot of those steps that were required to happen.
Let me say something. You see, guys, listen. First, let me tell you about your Kaplan example. There is a movie out called The Cure. The Cure, and its budget was $15,000. Watch it. By the way, received a 7.7 at IMDb. Issue 1. Issue 2. We say, oh, people, if we pay them, why should they work? Let me rephrase that question. If you pay people, why should they demean themselves? That's the question, not work. Demean themselves. If people are demeaning themselves, it's because They are begging for money. Otherwise, they would not put up with certain work they do. Another issue. So, oh, if we pay poor people, they become lazy. No, they become human beings. They will not demean themselves. That's another issue. But what happens is we accept certain paradigm and we try to stay within it. It's like the Uncle Tom's trying to tell the black, you know what, I understand, but guess what? That's how the world works. Another issue, I mean, for those of you who don't know what an Uncle Tom is, go study Black history. Then, so another issue in here, which is of utmost importance, is that, yes, we did talk about those few individuals who own half of the world, but we did not discuss those few worse individuals who are the dictators of the world. At least those people who made it by greed are better than those who made it by fooling people into believing that they're the saviors and they turn into the Stalins of the world. You know, the idea that Stalin took and made it into communism was brought forth by Marx, a very great thinker, even though he had issues with his thought. But what did they do? They turned a very good idea, as Stan was saying, that is a socialist, let's human being flourish and get them out of their alienated state of being, into the worst dictatorship ever. No, yes, like UBI has been tested in Iran. What was the end result? Actually, they gave people $50. Within a few years, that $50 became 50 cents. The end result is implementation is extremely important. People understanding. So therefore, because of the advent of this new technology where people do not need to do menial work, because a lot of work can be done automatically by devices, is giving us human beings a chance to maybe become human beings. I mean, it's talking about all these greedy people who become rich is only a very small aspect against those politicians who live in the pocket of those rich people and who betray the trust people put on them. As Stan was saying, they actually make a living by becoming a politician, and they have a very good life. They live on the top levels. Go look at every corrupt nation, and you see their politicians go to office to become rich. They are not entrepreneurial enough to be able to make it on their own. So what do? They leech on to the rich to do their bidding to make this happen. So the reality we as human race face are much more complex than what meets the eyes. The only solution is to provide every human being a minimal sustenance. Every human being. If they're rich, who cares? Why? Because it's not like saying, oh, so we're going to throw away money. Not really, because tax system takes that back. Many other system brings that back. And don't try to administer it. No, we do not need a KPI. All we're saying is, if you're a human being, you're entitled to, let's say, $1,000 a month, PPP, depending on what country. Just the fact that you're a human being, this is your right. You have a right and a minimum level of medical care. Here it is. Now you're a human being. So if a human being does not have a minimum level of sustenance and a minimum level of health care, that person cannot be expected to be a human being. So we're talking about a society in which, now you have $1 billion, here's your 1,000. It wouldn't make any difference anyways. And by the way, you go through the tax system and the way systems work, that money will come back. People are saying, oh, it's going to cost us $4 trillion in USA. No, it's going to cost us $500 billion because it will come back. If I'm making, let's say, $200,000 a year and government gives me, let's say, $24,000 for me and my wife, guess what? It's going to go back. I mean, automatically 80% of that, 70% of that will go back to the system. By the way, if people are so poor that they can't deal with it anymore, there won't be a country. There won't be a company. There won't be order for the few to own so much. Moo,
Yes,
sorry, I
Mr. Moo, what do you? Yes, because he come up with the idea of universal basic incomes, and there is actually huge response from audience, lot of
yeah, I think he's
questions.
the first.
But yes,
Um,
Mr. Moo.
Moo, you
So-
better publish that, okay? So we know you're the first who came up with UBI.
In every society, doesn't matter you are slavery, doesn't matter feudalism, doesn't matter you are capitalistic, we all have a common agreement that some of our people, of our population, do the work, and the rest of them do not do the work. But that sounds like a bad thing, right? But think about it. We don't let 2-year-old go out and farm, right? Why is that? That 2-year-old, and for a very uncomfortable reason, we don't let our 80 years old go out and farm either. Right? And after we got people those kind of people out of the workforce, who else do we get out of the workforce? Right? And by workforce, I don't mean be an accountant. I don't mean be a finance professional. I mean who actually makes stuff, who actually provides security against the nature, who actually grow food for us, who actually extract the resources from the earth and make it something, we make our life better, the quality of life better. Right? So those kind of work, those kind of production, it's not done by all the human, but who is there to decide who actually do the production and who decide how do we give those production away, right? And people who grow food don't just grow enough for themselves to eat, and whatever comes after that, I think Marx called it surplus, but I don't think that's an accurate term for it. Right? It's basically on top of what you have. It's I think the original German word he used just mean more. It doesn't really mean the surplus, the concept we use today. It's not really a surplus. It's basically the profit of production. And with that profit or with that surplus, we run our society. And all this discussion we're talking about today is talking about how do we distribute it better, and how do I define better? Is it better for the if we go to the utilitarians, better for the biggest numbers, people's biggest happiness, and are we really fulfilling that right now? No. Why are we? What are we? Look at who's the richest person in the world. In the U.S., I'm not sure he's the richest person in the world. Jeff Bezos. Right? What does he do? He delivers packages, and then we give him what? Last time I checked was about $100 billion, right? That's after his divorce. Before that, he was even more rich. And what does he do with that money? What does he do with that surplus? First of all, he squeezed everybody else out of business. He used that money. He leveraged it, and and all in the purpose of getting even more money. So what's the point of him having that kind of wealth? He only used it to accumulate even more wealth. And the next thing he did, what is? He's trying to do interplanetary travel. He wants to go to the moon. Think about it, how ridiculous this is. We as a society, and this is just in the US, I'm not talking about the world. The world, there are some even more ridiculous actors out there. Right? Let's just, US is kind of like the picture list of the world. Let's see what's happening in the US, and if they are doing it, if they are doing well, we follow. If they are not doing well, we stay away from that. But let's look at how ridiculous is the situation in the US right now. And a delivery guy, a guy who focuses on delivery packages, and we give basically, all the wealth, all the fame to him, and he used that money to figure out how to go to the moon. Come on. And while there are people starving. So that's the situation. That's what we need to fix. And UBI is only a very small part of it. It's only one school of thought about it. It's basically saying, okay, we still give Mr. Bezos whatever the wealth he need to go to the moon. But meanwhile, let's see if there's a way to get the wealth, a little bit wealth, maybe 1/10, maybe less than 1/10. Pool of UBI doesn't take 1/10 of top 10s, top 100s wealth, the top 100 wealthiest people's wealth. Just their wealth, give away 10%. They are still the wealthiest person in the world by far, and everybody else got fed. Everybody else don't make sure we don't starve. Right? There's an old Chinese saying, right? We save the desperate, we don't save the poor. Right? And it's a little bit lost in translation here, but the gist of it is, the point of the UBI is not really make somebody from poor to rich. The point of UBI is give somebody not even a fair chance, give somebody a chance to survive, and then we talk about next steps. Right now, when people are starving on the street, when they don't have a roof, when they keep stressing about being evicted, they can't think straight. They can't act like human. And when human do not act like human, they are no longer human, because that's the only thing separates human with the rest of the animal kingdom. And I guess this horse has been to death by Dr. Guabadi at this point, because he thinks like me, but he's more talkative. So a lot of point I'm making, it just seems like I'm repeating him, but I guarantee you this is just a case of similar minds thinking alike.
But with the difference here, Mo, and this is this: when human beings are not human, they don't become animals. No, they become
worse than
a lot worse. Yeah. Because no animal will just go kill for no reason. Animal kills either to protect or to eat. But we may kill 100 million people for no reason. You see, that's the danger of this thing. This human being has a potential that if it's not treated like human being, it's going to do a lot worse. As again, Mo was saying, and let me repeat after him, why would a 56-year-old man own $186 billion, and I have nothing against Mr. Bezos, for just delivering packages? What kind of world are we living in? Is that work? Did he make 186? By the way, he gave some 50 billion to the wife. I mean, did he really work for it? Where did it come from? How did you see? The problem with today's society is that I don't care if it's a politician, I don't care if someone who takes advantage of. And by the way, we worship them as we used to worship kings. Now we're worshiping rich people. As soon as they say something net worth, we never say. I mean, why Jeff Bezos has $186 billion? Why? Well, how did he get it? Where did he get it from? What is he doing with it? Okay, he gave $10 billion for a so-called climate grant. Go look into it. And you see, again, he's going to make another 20 billion out of it. How is it that by misery of all, some benefit most? Why is it that when there is blood in the street, some people are making money? The issues that humanity is facing has nothing to do with one political system or other. Has to do with our view of what does it mean to be human. We need to go back to what does it mean to be human. As, again, properly Mo said, we never want an 80-year-old to work or a 2-year-old to work. Why? Because human beings have a certain characteristics. Part of that characteristic is basic need. And basic need translates into basic income. And that is universal, has nothing to do with the country. If we do not take care of that, this world, go and see what happened to Great Persia. Look what happened to Rome. There is no guarantee that if we do not think about humanity from a natural point of view, then human beings have the ability to destroy themselves. we become a destructive force beyond imagination of the natural world. And that is the reality that we're dealing with. And the only possible solution is universal basic income. As we do not ration air, at least not up to now, we should not ration basic sustenance. Basic sustenance is something every human being, by belonging to the race, deserves to have. That is really the idea. But you understand that requires rethinking everything depending on the culture.
I'm going to
Yeah.
go to one of the
Yes.
questions I saw in the how does this boil down to the smaller countries in Southeast Asia? Okay, and not Southeast Asia, but Asia, the Pacific Rim. And I would have to say again, I do believe that it has to be implementation. So, of all of the countries that are currently have a UBI, who would you rate the top? Who would be a good model for these countries to follow? That's my question to the panel.
Actually, it's Korea. Just recently, this practice in Korea, in South Korea, please study it if you haven't done so. Even though the guy's running to become a president, and most likely he will, but it's been very effective. What did they do? They gave $250 to everyone, but they say you have to spend it in a local store. You cannot go to chains, or you cannot go to McDonald's. And so that credit card has to be spent in the local economy. You see, I think the future, I don't care if it's democracy, what you call it, governance need to be more local than global. Global anything, centralized anything runs the potential of corruption. Centralization is not how we were supposed to be. Every community needs to be run based on certain rules of engagement on a community level, where it reduces all of that overhead. When we help people, supposedly you give charity to a donation place that, let's say, is world peace, do you know only 10% of that at best goes to the end user? 90% is spent for the overhead. We need to get rid of overhead, period. I think communities have the vested interest to be stable, to be prosperous. Therefore, it has to go down not to a tribal, but to a very micro community level. And I believe, by the way, Eastern countries, especially models that we see all over the place, as I said, like South Korea, is going to be leading the rest of the world.
Mhm. Okay. I want to take few more questions from audience. Okay. Onika Shams, welcome again. Do you think UBI can make some people work less? Those who wanted to lead a sluggish life. Thank you. Another thing, I think this question is very important. Could UBI act as a form of compensation for fiat currency inflation? And Shumi, is basic income just too radical an idea to be implemented? Yes, there are more questions I want to take, but yes. Who want to start first? Holmes Turner. Okay. Mr. Mu, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Donor. I just want to chime in real quick about the UBI causing people laziness. There's really no studies supporting that argument, and there are plenty of studies actually disprove that UBI does not make people lazy. That's a very surprising thing, right? If I'm making $6,000 a month, give me another 1,000. Doesn't mean I don't want my 6,000. Right? If I'm not making anything, give me 1,000. Yes, I get an apartment. Then I still need money to buy food. That is the beauty of UBI. It's not the kind of money that makes you rich. It's the kind of money to keep you from becoming a crazy person because you can't afford to stay alive. So that's the whole argument here. It's not about getting somebody lazy, and it doesn't get somebody lazy. And if you say, "Oh, our country haven't done that before," if that's your argument, you don't have an argument. If just because you are not sure you're going to be successful at something and you don't do it, then we can't get anything then. And this ties into a certain culture level aspect as well. It's called uncertainty avoidance. It's studied, spearheaded by Hofstede. It's a pretty well established standard for each culture now. And if you look at it, a lot of Asian countries are actually in the very bottom list of that. They are willing to take risks. They do not want to avoid uncertainties. Right? They're okay with that. And that's why I'm hopeful, and that's why I'm bringing this up only in the context of PRBC. Right? If you talk this to a American panel, if we're really talking about how do we implement UBI in America, there are many problems we need to solve before even starting to talk about UBI. But the Pacific Rim, I think it has a much better chance to actually have a success. Right, and as Dr. Guabadi said, Korea actually leads in the world UBI implementation right now. They pretty much figured it out. And yes, Dr. Guabadi mentioned something we need to localize some of our political, so some of our administrative aspect of our politics. But that doesn't mean you isolate each little tribe. They still trade with each other. They still interact with each other. It's not a reverse of globalization. I just want to make that distinction. It's a reduce of our overhead of a centralized political system. Political system is not a reverse of a globalized economy.
Actually, you see what happened in this Hofstede study. It used to be that the Eastern countries, especially Eastern Asia, they wanted to avoid any uncertainty. But guess what? In the past 20 years, as their economic situation improved, their appetite for risk has gone up. Now we see a lot of entrepreneurial movements in places where they were not willing to take a risk. What it says is that when you allow human beings to be human beings, they become innovative. When you allow human beings to have the security of, don't worry, try your idea, and you're not going to go hungry, then they become more motivated to do something. Let me share with you an experience. I used to be a life coach before coming back to university, and I dealt with a lot of billionaires. They can afford to pay, as Mo was saying. So guess what? When I asked them, okay, you have, let's say, $500 million. Why do you need another $10 million? They had no answer for it, except that everyone does it. I guess this is how I become more of me. And so, but why did they need a life coach? Because they had no love life. They had really bad relationship with their children. Everyone hated them, right? So when I started talking to them, and the way I would go is I would try to have them focus more on who they are than what they have. Interestingly, everyone I have dealt with, when they realize that there is more to being a human than accumulating wealth, every one of them, without exception, I think I've dealt with about 20 some, every one of them chose to do other things rather than accumulating wealth. The issue of worshiping money as the new God, has really taken humanity off its course. Universal basic income allows human beings to flourish as human beings. That's the only solution for humans to go and look at what their potentials are. People around here, because our basic needs are taken care of, we're willing to share with others around the world.
Yes, Mr. Yeah.
Ali, here.
Dr. Ali.
Yeah, I'm finished. I just, yeah.
Okay,
Your
okay,
microphone.
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's just look
Okay,
at
okay.
2 seconds. Let's just look at this idea. Let's say I give you a place to live. It's basic. May or may not have a bedroom, basic, and then you get basic food. So you have basic food. Are you not going to want to also have TV? Are you also not wanting to have a cell phone? Would you also not want to go out to dinner once in a while? Would you maybe want to have a nicer car? Would you like to go travel and spend more time with relatives you care about? How much is enough? Where people are going to say, well, I'm done. I don't need to work. I'll just sit in my basic apartment eating my basic food, and that's as far as I want for life. That's not typically what happens. And I think Boo brought that point up. Is basic income isn't to say, here's enough money to give you everything you need and be happy. It's here's enough money so that you have a basic place to eat, a basic food, but that's it.
I've been
Yes.
traveling to around Asia for 30 years. I've been living in 5 different countries, and I'm very aware of the local people and the way they think, whether it's in the Philippines, mountains of Vietnam, or down in Thailand, or all over China. And I find one universal thing is if people are happy with their daily life, whether it's having a meal on the table, having a house to live in, having some kind of transportation, where they have very minimal stress, they'll go along with that pretty much forever. If they have a chance to elevate themselves in a social structure, they love to do that. But as long as they have that safety net, you don't have social problems. It's the time when they're free falling. They have nothing to grab onto. The only thing they have is their family, and if their family can't give them support, then they're in free fall. And when people are in free fall, they're capable of doing anything. Talk about wild animals. They're worse than a wild animal because they can think and reason. They will do something to survive. And the whole idea is to come up with some kind of mechanism to keep that from happening. And I don't care what country you're in, including Malaysia, including any country in Latin America. Desperation. Look at the people trying to come in through Honduras and Guatemala. They're so desperate that they'll do anything and sacrifice for their children, for their families, because things are so desperate. There has to be some kind of net. Otherwise, this thing is going to deteriorate faster and faster, and universally, globally, around the world. Everybody's got the same problem. Free fall. And the universal basic income is, as Mr. Moo so wisely said, is just one part of it. Shelter, medical, having money in your pocket so you can buy a Coca-Cola if you want to go to the store. Those are basic things, and people can do that. You're not going to really have a lot of problems with that. When you start having problems is they can't get medical care. They don't have any place to live. They can't even come up with 25 cents to buy a Coca-Cola, okay? That's when you have a serious, serious social problem. And I see it coming. I've seen it coming for 20, 25 years, but I see it becoming more and getting more velocity, getting more and more velocity as we go along. Because as Dr. Ali said, you take a guy like Jeff Bezos or Berkshire Hathaway or the rest of these characters that control the economies of the United States, the most developed country in the world, and basically people that live in this society can't go to the doctor. They cut off their Social Security. They basically take away all their means of stability. Something bad's going to happen, and that's a guarantee.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Dr. Stan Foster.
Well, I agree with what's being said. The only thing I'm just trying to put it in context. I think that if you don't have, I agree with the UBI is a good idea. You know, one of my degrees is in sociology, and humans did develop. They are tribal. They are attracted to smaller groups, and but the challenge is having that governance being a little bit more local. I think that's a smart strategy. But one of the bigger problems is as countries adopt a UBI policy, okay, if they don't adopt it simultaneously or pretty close to simultaneous, then the challenge is, for instance, we're having in the United States open borders. If suddenly we were to wave a magic wand and we have UBI and it's the apple of the world's eye, and we still have open borders, then that's not going to fix the problem in Guatemala. It's not going to fix the problem in these other countries, and the United States would become even a larger magnet. And I don't know how it would sustain that. Okay, because you can, even if you do UBI, how do you fund UBI? So if people if we're attracting people that come in and don't contribute to a tax base, okay, and maybe that happens over a period of time, but right now we don't have those structures in place. So again, I see a double challenge here. So is that I do think utilizing the South Korea as a model, I think that's brilliant. Okay, I don't see at $250. I don't know exactly what South Korea's economics look like. I don't think that puts us in what Eric Westridge was talking about, where you've got everything paid for in terms of your food and your shelter. I don't know if that is enough money to pay for that in total, right? But I think it would be a good start. But again, how do we balance? How do we keep mass migration happening to those adopting countries that are forward thinking and forward implementing and get it right? Those are issues I think are very, very big questions in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Like one specific things like before these sessions, like World Talent Economy Forums, we are in this session with Joltan Skevan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I would like to address at least one of Dr. Foster's problem about the U.S. being more of a magnet to attract everybody. The U.S. is nowhere near its capacity, population density-wise speaking. I know sometimes it feels crowded, but if you look at the data, there are many countries in the world has more population density than the U.S. And not to mention, just compare U.S. and China. It's two of the top world economy, right? So China has 4 times as dense population as U.S. and they make it work. And and not to mention China has way less livable land than the U.S. If you talk about the mountains in the west, if you're talking about the deserts on the northern border, those are not livable lands. But if you go to the U.S., there are more place for people to live. Yes, America. If the conservatives get their way, no more other country people, no more immigrants. Right? That's I don't know where that mentality come from, but the country actually was founded on the principle of bring in anybody basically without any discrimination. And once they come in, we figure out where do we put them in our society. And the UBI will UBI cover new immigrants? That's a very interesting question. But again, the whole reason we bring this out within the Pacific Rim context is because this might be too big a taboo to bring up in the U.S. And the part of whether we can have more people coming to the U.S., I definitely say the answer is yes. But that ties into immigration, so maybe that's another topic. But in regarding to once we have those small communities, once we get people to actually live, without fear of being starved to death. Is that once we have that, do we welcome people to do things the same way we do it? And that my answer is yes. When there are more new immigrants come in, they can form their own community, or they can, form communities with our people who doesn't have a community yet. And hopefully that's going to be a better community than what's existing, because they have seen the mistakes and what's working with the existing ones, and that is a positive circle, right?
I'm talking about legal immigration. America was founded on legal immigration.
Don't even get me started on legal or not legal, because the immigration law. Immigration law is the thing needs to be changed before we can talk about the immigration, legal or non-legal, right?
But Mu, does China let everybody come in across the borders that just wants to?
No.
Do they? Then we're not talking apples to apples.
Neither do U.S.
No, that's why I said legal immigration. That's why I said legal immigration. China has legal immigration, and they follow those policies. The United States has legal immigration.
China is not really an immigrant country. China is not an immigrant country, right? It's a country with a ton of people already, right? And think about it in the world perspective. Do we put more people in the place that's packed with the most people, or do we put people in place where there are fewer people and are suitable for living? So I think we're getting off topic here with the immigration discussion. Maybe
I'm just trying to see the lens that you're looking at it through. Is all.
Yeah, well, before you look at the legal and illegal, look at the law. See if the law makes sense, right? If the law doesn't make sense, then we need to fix law before we talk about it. If you have a better immigration system, have a better way to immigrant, right? We can get rid of all the illegal crossings. But before you have that, you just have a bunch of people stuck in the system. If they're already here, do you send them back? Right? That's the question. And if you don't send them back, what do you do with them? There are people, you can't just kill them, but you can put them in cages, I guess. But are we really living in that kind of society? Do we really want to live in a society where putting a human being for just being somewhere in cages is a normal thing to do? Is an acceptable thing to do, not even normal, right? So if your answer to that is yes, then we can't really keep talking about immigrants.
Now, are you talking about China? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the U.S.
Oh, okay. So all of the reports coming there that people are held in camps, that's not possible.
Well, if you've been to,
we shouldn't go there, Mu, and you should probably take this off.
I personally think, again, going back to the nature of how things work, for sure, when we look at the tactics of central government, the tactics used by Chinese are by far more brutal than anything any other country would. Maybe Iran would be following, or North Korea. The reality is what happens with the best of intentions. That's what we're looking at. Even with the best of intentions, when you bring power into one place, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, I don't care if that power is concentrated in one individual like Bezos, or the Amazon for that matter, or if it's in a Communist Party, or if it's all Republican or all Democratic, or the so-called Islamic whatever. What we are looking at is any deviation from what human beings are has a tendency to cause difficulty. In reality, when you look at it and you try to understand what are the root causes of all of these disturbances, we see everything that is considered to be negative. But the question we're facing today is, are there possibilities and solutions we can understand and partake in trying to alleviate these issues that humanity is facing. Today, I don't care who you are, at what level of the social status you belong to, what we need to worry about is sustainability of the current system. Current system is not sustainable. I don't care if it's disinformation that is causing it, but that's not the root cause. The root cause easily can be seen that human beings are being deprived of what makes them human beings. Right now, just go to the central part of USA, hardworking Christians who believe in principles of freedom, seeing that the rug is being pulled up out of their, below them, and what they're seeing is that they're losing their livelihood. They believe they are being discriminated against. They believe they cannot make ends meet. They believe that their America is being stolen from them. Now, I don't care how they come to such a conclusion. I don't care what president says or what party says. The reality is that their fear is well founded. It's very well founded. They see every day their buying power is reduced. They see that their town grocery is going out of business. They, especially with this pandemic, things that would have taken much longer have become more relevant and pertinent. And they're seeing that unemployment is running rampant all over the place. So we see that they are not behaving in a very civilized manner. And we're talking about in the best country in the world, USA. There is no country as civilized because of its uh, forefathers, because of its founding principles. And today we still see there is a reason I live in USA, because it's the best. There is a reason how it has the potential for anyone to speak the way we do. You think we could do that, let's say, back in Iran? No way. No way. You think you could have done that? That's where I come from. You think you could have done that in any other nation the way we do it here? No way. However, what we need to realize and understand is that the problem is much more complex than just simply saying this party, that party, this regime, that regime. It goes at the root of what does it mean to have a sustainable, resilient society. Sustainability and resilience is at the core of treating human beings like human beings and understanding that universal basic income should be considered a right of being a human. I don't care if you're rich, I don't care if you're talented, I don't care if you're into music, I don't care if you're into arts or engineering, I don't care if you just want to go read or you're going to be a bird watcher. For you to be able to do that which matches your personality, you need first to be a human being. And to be a human being, basic rights to sustenance, medical care, and belonging to a society. Now, this is what really universal basic income is all about. And if you go and study the underlying reasons behind majority of the wars, majority of the uprisings and revolution, you will find that a lot of people felt they are hopeless. I believe universal basic income is being tested. The results are very promising. Now, you said, I don't know how $250 a quarter. In reality, it just shows the significance. First of all, out of that $250, all of it went into the local economy. It stopped a lot of stores, local stores, from closing. It kept the local economy going rather than the global economy. Because global economy, as a matter of fact, while some companies have lost their livelihood, stock market has not. Major global players have done even better than before. The question we're talking about is not stock market, is local economy. Because when local economy fails, the local environment fails, the local atmosphere fails. theft, thievery, murder goes up. Our job, as yes, we are human beings, but more than anything else, we belong to one another. Yes, I am part of a human race, but I am more part of a CMU than I am part of human race. As a matter of fact, I think human race is mixture of these local groups. If a family is safe, if a work environment is safe, if a city, if a neighborhood is safe, globally we have safety. Safety doesn't go top down. Safety goes bottom up. And that's safety. And that's the reason even we participate in these meetings. My hope is that each and every one of you who watches this right now, live stream or watches it later, understands that you as a human being not just have the right, actually have the duty to understand what does it mean to be human. First, apply to your own life, to those whom you have control over, and participate. To be honest, I believe just this one slogan that human beings deserve basic income, that alone, human, by just being merely human beings deserve basic income, that alone can change the world, can take majority of the unrest and stress away from our global arena. As human beings, we deserve to have a place to live, food to eat, and a place if we get sick, we can go for basic medical needs. If we have that, we can become a better human being. I think we need, rather than making it complex, go back to simplicity. What do I, as human being, deserve? And by the way, the earth belongs to me as much as it belongs to anyone else. That's not to say that I need to have a house that is 20,000 square feet. No, but I and this earth have a symbiotic relationship, and I have as much right to this earth as the next person. When you look at it like that, then maybe if we take this particular idea of what are the basic human rights when it comes to the ability to sustain life, sustain a dignified life, I think the rest will take care of itself. Because keep in mind, Bezos listens to the market, politicians listen to the market. The problem is markets don't know what they want. People don't know what they want. Educate people, understand your basic rights. Everyone else who actually have control, without you knowing it, they have that control from your submission to that control. Therefore, I think we need to start thinking, writing, and discussing issues that brings unity, brings us back to a place that I, as a human being, have a basic right to life. And life means sustenance and an ability to live a worry-free, not luxurious, worry-free, anxiety-free life.
Mhm.
What do you
Yes,
think, Eric?
yes. Yes, thank you. Actually, we have many questions from audience. I just want to take few because if I do not like take their questions, they think that today I skip their question. But I think there is a huge response from audience. They have many things, but even though sometimes they are come up with some basic question, this is good. Like at least we are collaborating. At least from North America, even Argentina, I'm finding that people are joining. Mohammed Sohail Rana, hello sir. Would not free money corrupt people and lead to more laziness and drug use? This is my Argentine friend. Hi from Argentina. There is more questions. Yes. Hosnera, will UBI change the power of relationship in society? Nurul Afsar, how could universal basic income be protected by a change in government? Mansoor Rashid, if receiving a basic income, would people stop striving to improve themselves? And Azizur Rahman, would huge difference in the basic income by different countries cause more difficulties such as immigrations and economic migrants? So For these things, I have to go to my friend Mr. Mu.
Oh God. Uh, so, I mean, if the reason keeping you from making your own citizens' life better is so that you don't want to attract immigrants, then I don't think you have a reason at all. Right? Think about it. By saying, I don't want to implement the UPI because it will make everybody's life in my country better, therefore more people will come to my country and ruin my country. Think about it. Think about that statement. Right? So it's saying we want to make our house shitty, so burglars doesn't burgle my house. I'll burgle it myself. I'll destroy my house. So that's not logical, right? So yes, immigrants is especially unmanaged immigrants can be very troublesome, and we have seen that happen in many countries. In the European countries, why is Brexit a thing? That caused by uncontrolled immigrants. And why are many countries in the EU are closing their door a little bit on the immigrants? Because it hasn't really worked out that well for them. It's an ideal. Immigrants actually come and contribute. It's an ideal, and some numbers do back it up. But I doubt how many of those studies are actually done on a pure random basis instead of they only pick the winners. Because the losers of the immigrants, they don't participate in studies. Right? That's the limitation of academic. That's the limitation of doing research before you do things. And that is why we are advocating, give it a try. Right? At least let's see if it works. And we need to be open to ideas. And that's I guess that's the whole divide between the so-called progressiveness and the conservativeness. Not really talking about it in the context of political alliances. I'm talking about people want to change or people want to keep it the same. Very basic level of mentalities in taking approaches. If people want to change, why would they want to change? People want to keep it the same, why would they want to keep it the same? Once you answer those basic questions, then you can make a decision on which is a better idea. And it happens to be, I think UBI happens to be that idea where it actually, fakes something instead of just let it rot. And yeah, that is my. I don't want to keep talking about the immigrants because that's a topic way beyond my pay grade, and I'm not in a position to talk about that topic. I'm very biased on that front due to my personal and my personal situation and my personal beliefs. So yeah, and stay in UBI, yes, I can work with that. And there are people saying, UBI will get the druggies to buy more drugs, get the junkie to go just blow the money on drug. Yes, that is a possibility, but that is part of the risk you have to take, right? And who says if they get enough money to buy drugs, at least they will buy it in a safe way. Right? Druggies will keep trying to get drugs, doing whatever necessary. And give them a UBI, maybe will stop them from robbing somebody to get the money to buy drugs. And that would be my arguments against that. And if you keep throwing the weird situations at me, I will have weird answers for you as well. And that is the fact of a political discussion. Right? When we talk about new policy, there are always outliers, and outliers will always have outlier solutions.
But then again, I don't think Mo, as he said, he's not in a position to answer such a question. That's not his pay grade, nor is his position. And what he's doing is like any other person who's not expert in this area voicing an opinion. But reality, going back to our topic, is simple. Some of the questions we're asking has to do with status quo, has nothing to do with the alternative that we're talking about. UBI used to be something that people had a option to discuss or not to discuss. To be honest, I believe UBI sooner rather than later will be an option that every nation has to examine closely. UBI seems to be the way to a future sustainability. UBI seems to be actually the way even major corporations can continue operating. UBI is no longer an option, even though people think that when things go back to normal, it's going to be life as usual. There is a new normal on the horizon. That new normal, people will lose their confidence. And as soon as people lose their confidence, they go into saving modes. And because they go into saving modes, they will consume less. They will spend less. And this will have negative effect on the market as a whole. Yes, all the money that governments have pumped into their national infrastructure in trying to make sure that COVID doesn't destroy that particular infrastructure have gone to those who had the option of taking it, mainly large corporations. But as soon as life goes back to normal, the new normal, post COVID-19, has nothing to do. In all honesty, I believe COVID-19 is going to be a marker for a new historical event. And that historical event is major change in the way consumers consume. And that major change will have a creeping effect on every organization and every political party and on every corporation. And as such, we need to create a confidence universally. And that confidence will not be brought about unless we provide humanity with a level of certainty for the future. Who's to say that very soon we're not going to have something similar to COVID-19? No one can say that. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are predicting that this type of phenomena is going to be in the near future a normal. And because that's the case, governments, corporations, organizations need to think about sustainability and resilience. And that might not be possible without thinking of some form of universal basic income in which will give mankind, global population, their confidence back. And maybe by doing that, the ones who are falling through the cracks and are going hungry every night, they might benefit from it. But we have entered a new era, an era in which humanity as a whole is in danger, and especially those who have used humanity, such as governments and major corporations, they are feeling the pinch. And I think you're going to see rhetorics will change in every aspect of our social construct. Eric, you've been quiet.
Yes, Mr. Eric.
So, you know, we were talking about this idea of immigration and people moving and people behavior. And one thing to keep in mind is that immigration is a competition to get the best people who can solve your problems. So you want a good place, especially when you bring in good people and they need to adjust, because moving anywhere is tough. If you move to Canada, you have to walk in with money to make sure you last a while. So it's very tough to get started. And some of the good people really have to rip their lives away to change. So you want to bring in good people, keep bad people out. You want to take care of the good people that you select to come in. When those people come in, there's been a lot of assumptions that people be lazy, they won't care, they won't want more. That's not our nature, and that's not what the data shows. So the real key is we want to take care of the people that we have, however you want to do it. And we also want to go entice good people, more good people, to come to your country. And I don't know if UBI is the way to do it, but that's certainly something to be considered.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Dr. Stan Foster.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I just come back. I think that immigration is just one of the many challenges. The largest challenge you're going to have is getting a UBI on a global perspective. You've got so many countries, and you've got so many different forms of governance within those countries. Unless a magic wand could come out and you did a ubiquitous UBI initiative, I just see that this is going to be taking place at different times and at different speeds. And in many areas, a lot of the questions are here. And it's too radical. What about this? All of these fears that keep surrounding this issue. And it's not in the same, it flies in the face of what we're talking about. We're talking about more on a humanitarian level. And what could motivate people, and what elements they need to assure them of a basic goodness of their life, a human quality to their life. So unfortunately, sometimes these are mutually exclusive. That doesn't, just because that is needed, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And because there's so many different characteristics on it, those countries that are more advanced and that are more humanitarian are going to implement these structures. Now, if they're implemented on a similar format, we're going to find what good formats work and some that don't work so well. But again, just talking about how long it's going to take to implement these things, how long you would see to the social changes that would be necessary to make any form of UBI in any country a success, and that you could declare a success. I don't see that happening at the earliest before probably 72 months. Okay, so that would be lightning speed in certain of these issues. So it's just, to me, it's a big issue. I think we can, and our audience, I don't even think that there's a majority of them at this point that might agree with us that a UBI is a really good element. But I think we could all agree that if indeed UBI is ever enacted, it's going to be a very complex issue.
Yes, thank you. Basically, for this UBI, Universal Basic Income, we get very good idea how to implement, what will be the strategic point of views, even though we come up with the immigrations and other point. But most important thing is that how we can implement it, or what will be the benefit and the advantage and disadvantage we discussed today. So hopefully in the next sessions with this, because of huge audience response, because still they have questions, still they want to learn more and understand more. And you have to understand it's 2 a.m. in Malaysia, so this is middle of the night, but still they are waiting for you. This is the good point for Miramar University and Pacific Crime Business Business Council. And I believe that if you continue another 1 hour, I think we will have our audience and they will continue asking you questions. So hopefully in the next week we can come up with a different idea. Even if you Dr. Ali, if you want to declare that what's the topic we can discuss, like my Monday, your Sunday morning. Yes, my Monday, 12:05. Yes.
No, I think now we've done enough of large level and large scale discussions. I think now we need to go into so-called small business strategy and small business development in spite of the current pandemic and the future. So I believe next session we're going to look at new strategies for micro and small businesses looking into the post-COVID era and how they can sustain and grow their businesses. So that's the, I think, direction we're going to go, considering our audience and also considering what we are interested, because at the large level we get into trouble. It's best to go where it matters, meaning something that our audience can use, and this is really where California Miramar University is moving towards. Our target audience are small, medium businesses where they want to know exactly what to do, because our core competencies of micro and small businesses are different than that of large corporations, and therefore, because competitive advantage directly depends on core competencies, starting next week, we're going to go on appropriate strategies for small and micro businesses to sustain and grow post COVID-19. That's what we're going to be discussing. Again, keep in mind, if anything's going to happen, I don't care what country does what, at the end of the day, USA has been on the forefront of every experiment, and just recent events in USA will tell you clearly that if UBI is going to happen, it's going to happen here, and you're going to be hearing it, because US is where things are discussed openly and developed to its fullest extent, and most likely, again, US will lead UBI despite all the difficulties. With that said, I wish you all a very good morning, I guess, for those of you who are in Malaysia and same time zone.
Yes, thank you. I want to request Mr. Mu for the concluding remarks, then Dr. Stan Foster's, then Mr. Eric, and if anything's from Dr. Ali about today's session. Yes, Mr. Mu.
We agree on many things. We disagree on some things, and the beauty of a discussion like this is we can agree to disagree, and that's the basic, the basis of a civilized discussion. And I appreciate we have a platform like this to speak what we care about, and I guess today is a very good discussion on hashing out the societies we are living in and the basic needs of mankind, and what is the basic decency of mankind, and is basic mankind decency a human right? Right. That this is the stuff we focus on today, and hopefully next time we will be talking about more what to do than just the ideals, and we will be focusing on small business strategies. And I don't think we have decided on the specific direction yet, but that actually excites me, and that is where I live and breathe, and looking forward for our next discussion.
Thank you. Dr. Stan Foster.
Oh, okay. I thought Eric was going to go before me. But again, thank you for having the topic. I think it's a very interesting one. And I do think what Dr. Guyabadi said is we'll see where the United States goes in this next 3 or 4 years. I think there's a lot of possibilities. And again, my fear in the United States is things are so politically charged that even good ideas can sometimes get scuttled because of political infighting. And so I don't think the United States is out of the woods by any matter. And I do think that, again, this is a very complex issue. And trying to get a consensus, unless it were brought by some organization like the United Nations, and again, maybe it would require another profoundly more potent COVID type of situation. Not that we're out of COVID right now, but this has got us talking. This particular pandemic has got us talking, and these type of events tend to make people more cohesive, make them see to the future a little bit more clearly. And I think that in that weird way, I think this has helped the world get better focused on what this particular pandemic brought and what other future possible pandemics could bring. And I do think that's going to get us thinking outside the box. And I think just thinking outside the box is what's necessary. I'm also happy that we're going to be moving next week to more, manageable, more spot on for our small and micro-sized businesses, something that they can really put to use and help them in their operations. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Eric.
You muted, Eric, I think.
Is that working?
Got you now.
Yes.
Cool. So I think one principle that we can all agree on is that we want to help people when they need help, but nobody wants to carry somebody else on their back. So regardless of what the solution is, above all, people want a sense of fairness. We don't need everything to be equal, but we want to know that whatever the system is, that it's fair. And so that's one of the guiding principles toward implementing whatever solution we want to implement. In implementing those solutions, we have to be very careful to not prejudge what a solution is. In the corporate world, whenever we would bring up these crazy new ideas like we need to go to web services, people say, oh no, let me tell you why that doesn't work. Geospatial information, let me tell you why that's not going to work. Social media, let me tell you why that's not going to work. You can't begin to tell you the number of discussions I had with so many people who could already tell me that an idea wouldn't work, it wasn't needed. When I left the corporate world and went to a startup community, the thing that shocked me the most was when you'd come up with these crazy ideas. You know what I think we need? A channel, TV channel for pets. People wouldn't say that wouldn't tell you why that worked. What they would say is, how are you going to test that? And it was that opened this whole new idea that, well, that's a crazy idea. How are you going to test that? And watching hundreds of entrepreneurs, what we found is that so many of the things that you thought were crazy were turned into businesses. Not everything. A lot of those ideas turned out to be crazy. In fact, someone said the first job of an entrepreneur is to find out whether you're right or the world is. And you only do that by doing it and testing, kind of like Moolite. So let's just do stuff and find some data. But it doesn't do a lot of good to say, here's how people are, here's how they behave. We understand everything about people, because what we found out that people don't respond like everybody thinks. You can't predict that. I mean, there was one device that in the startup company I was doing, they were in the office next door, and they invented Clever Pet, which was basically a game console for pets. Turned out to be a great idea, and actually was psychologically based. Started with pet psychology. Who thought? Crazy ideas. So whatever it is, especially if it's scale, we need to not make preconceived notions. We start with where we want to go and go there, keeping the idea that we just want to help when we can, don't want to work for somebody else. We want to work for ourselves, but we want to help people when we can. So I guess just don't throw up the here's why UBI wouldn't work. And I'm not saying it will. Just don't start with, let me tell you why it can't work. That's my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Before the concluding remarks of Dr. Ali, actually World Talent Economy Forum, Asia Research and Development Institute, Al Noor Academy, and we are taking another initiative of School of Talent Economy. As you are from the academic industry, so in the futures, if we want to do any kind of research in Asia Pacific, especially the micro initiative, as well the micro business organization, we can do even any kind of conference and this kind of things. We are open for arrange this point. Even the I think 25th of this month, we are going to arrange a thing, the futuristic leaderships. We will arrange summit. So we have many interesting plan. So any points like the Pacific Rim Business Council, even this Miramar University, we can arrange summit, we can arrange conference, and definitely it will be online, so we can do it. Yes. And Dr. Ali, yes, what's the concluding remarks for today?
I mean, all in all, thank you first of all, WTEF, because I think this is just beginning of a conversation. We're scratching the surface. We don't know what we're really talking about. It's not clear. It's an idea. But one thing, Eric says fair, and I say sustainable. And I believe if it's not fair, it won't be sustainable. But because the words have been misused and taken away, fair used to be fair, and now fair means something else. It's fair for someone to make $1 billion a month, and it's fair for someone to make $5 an hour. So I don't know how that fair came to be fair, but then the fair value, because of that, I am more inclined toward sustainability. And this world needs us to understand what it means to be human being. I believe this is a start of a conversation. Now we're going to go back to more practical aspect of business management. However, I invite each and every one of you to look into this subject, because you'll be amazed how much of a difference one individual can make. This world, whatever you see, is not because of the 7 billion, but of the very few who have had the courage to make mistakes and bring things to forefront and discuss and write and lobby. So thank you so much, World Talent Economy Forum, for having the courage to bring us and other people like us into your forums and bring this world closer to one another. Thank you all for staying up so late, and we wish you the very best. See you next week. Take care.
Thank you. Especially, I do want to give special thanks to our audience, because long time they're waiting, they come up with the questions, and most important thing, I want to give all of you special thanks, because our audience learning about different strategy, learning about different economical aspects. This is very important for us. We are taking this kind of initiative because we want to create a very interesting ecosystems, and by this way, even every day I getting call from different developing countries and the developing nations. They want to do their strategy, let's say, for their healthcare system, for their educations, for their good governance. So we are very open for collaborations and contributions. So any of the good idea, because through our like World Talent Economy forums, we are trying our level best to collaborating with the developing nations as much as possible, and we are getting a fantastic like supports and friendly relationship from around the world. So your collaborations and partnership definitely enrich World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you for your valuable time. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.